Україні!
Hello everyone, welcome back. My name is Paul with the new news. I hope that y'all have had a wonderful last couple of days. I hope that you guys enjoyed your Monday and of course your Tuesday. Hopefully it wasn't too bad at work for you. So there's obviously a lot of stuff going on. We are covering 48 hours. The last big news has happened over the last couple of days. And there's been a lot. There's been a lot of developments, globally. There's been a lot of developments in Ukraine. There's been a lot of developments, regarding Ukraine, on the global level, with a lot of summits going on, a lot of big developments for NATO and stuff like that. But a lot of this stuff isn't necessarily always good. A lot of this stuff isn't necessarily... The stuff that doesn't necessarily make the news isn't always a good thing. We go out of our way to find good stuff, actually, and that's the sad reality of it. So as you go through this, please check out the video description below, and you're going to see that there are a ton of organizations there. But that is all for you guys to go check out. You guys have made this an awesome community because you guys have made it so that way we can be the news that gives back. We don't just give the news, you give back to the very news that we talk about here on the channel. And that's an awesome endeavor. That's exactly what we're trying to do here. We are never going to do super chats. We're never going to be pushing merch or anything. It's all going to be about the organizations and the charities and the fundraisers and the foundations that are going to help people worldwide. That's what's important to us. That's what we're here to do, and you guys make that possible. So I can't thank you enough for the support you guys have already given them, but and given to us. But please continue support. If you can't give a lot to these organizations, give a little. If you can't give anything at all, then give us a like and subscribe and tell your friends, because that really helps us. The more people we reach, the more people that can help the that not only can come and enjoy the news, but also, more importantly, get to help out those organizations. The more people that are here, the more help we can give back to the world, the more help we can give people throughout the world that are suffering under a large amount of crises. And not just in Ukraine, but places like the Horn of Africa, Brazil, Ethiopia, Somalia, Iraq, all over the world, there's a crisis going on. And for a large amount of my viewers, I notice a lot of them live in the United States. And there's quite a bit of stuff, obviously, that happens in the United States. We actually have a couple points here today that have to regard to the United States. But believe it or not, most people don't think this, but if you live in the United States, you live in actually one of the wealthiest countries in the world. In fact, the United States accounts for 30% of the wealth of the United States. In fact, if you're watching this, you're actually wealthier than 95% of the world. 80% of the world currently lives on less than $10 a day, with a third of that living on less than $2 a day, and 1.2 billion people globally live on less than $1.25 a day, meaning they live on less a day than it takes to buy coffee here to start your morning here in the United States. 1 billion people live with food insecurities globally, and 4.5 billion people live with water insecurities. You can survive in the world without food for weeks at a time, but it only takes 3 days of no water for you to actually perish. And 2 billion people currently in the world live in conflict-affected areas. So I just wanted to leave those statistics with you, so that way you can understand that, there's a reason why we're here to do this, and that is it. There's a lot of stuff that happens in the world, and a lot of us, myself included, have for a very long time taken a lot of this for granted, and I want to give back and improve people's lives throughout the entire world as a result. So please keep that in mind. I thought those were some very interesting statistics to share to you guys and kind of help you kind of ponder, exactly where you're at. And so, with that, though, there is a couple of good news before we get directly into the actual news here. If you notice down in the description, we have actually done something. This has been something I've been working on for a little bit now. We have officially launched our website. Our website link is on the description below. It has a bunch of different links for you. Most importantly for you guys, the ones most interested, every single day that we've reported the news up until the point that we've been archiving them, we have all of the maps there in chronological order there on the website for you guys. You guys can go and check it out. Some stuff that I've written on there for technical documents you guys can go and check out. Once we get large enough and actually start doing more in-depth investigative journalism on top of what we're doing here with the stream every night, articles will get posted onto there. If we ever actually end up turning this into a nonprofit organization, our financial reports will also go on there as well. There's a section for that. There's a section so you can see who's in the team and who does what. on there, so you guys can go and check it out. All of our official emails, we do have an official email for everybody on there, so if you guys want to email us or have any organizations you don't want to contact us through, the Discord is on there, as well as links to the channel and the Discord. So go and check that stuff out, guys. It's been a long time in the works. I've been doing this really since we started the channel, but it's a lot of stuff that you guys have asked for, especially with those maps. I figured you guys would like to see those and kind of go through the links yourselves and kind of go through what's been going on. And it is up to date, clear up into the last stream on June 26th, and this will also be added in order as we go through, clear through the end of the year, and we'll categorize them by year and month. So go and check that out as well. I hope you guys enjoy. I hope give us some feedback on what we can do to improve it. It is still in its kind of beginning stages, so I'm always looking for input and helping with that. But with all of those announcements out of the way, then we can officially get into the news. And there's a ton of stuff. So we start with a special report here in Ukraine. And the first thing we start off with is over here in Lviv. And that's because Western Ukraine is actually preparing for invasion from Belarus. There's been a lot of military activity by the Belarusian military there on the border. Belarus and Russia are in a union together. So most people think that the Soviet Union completely collapsed. Belarus and Russia are in a union together anyway. They don't have an official flag yet. They don't have an official anthem. There's been several that have been proposed. They still just use the Russian national anthem. They both have the ruble as their main currency. So it's just two countries in a union instead of just, a absolute crap ton in the Soviet bloc. So, but there has been a lot of Russian activity increased there in Belarus and around Belarus. Also, there's been activity regarding the Belarusian military has been really mobilized there on the borders with Ukraine, and that's kind of what we're seeing here. But Ukraine, especially here in Lviv, they're preparing for that. So if that was to occur, that would be putting extra pressure on them from the western side, and that would really force Ukraine to fight on two fronts. Not that it would probably be too much of an issue. Ukraine's already stated, that's not much of an issue, that they are already prepared for that scenario. They've already kind of pondered that. They know that just because they withdrew from here doesn't mean they can't return, and they most certainly can. And as we jump over here into Kyiv, we have a couple of different things. First of all, injured Ukrainian troops did arrive in Kyiv from Dnipro yesterday via train, and we can take a look at that here as well. And they are just lined up and ready to go. So there are just a ton of ambulances. A lot of first responders. A lot of the main hospitals are here in Kyiv. But as you become injured, obviously your buddies are going to take care of you right then and there. But there's this rule called the golden hour. If you're familiar with tactical combat casualty care or any of that, it's called the golden hour rule. You need to get to a higher 80%. If you don't get to a higher echelon of care once you become a combat casualty within the first hour, then your likelihood of survival actually drops 70%. In case you guys didn't know that. So that's why it's so important. Medical care is so important. It doesn't necessarily mean that you aren't going to survive if it's past that hour. Especially, it really depends on the wound. But statistically speaking, 70% survival rate drop if you aren't evacuated from combat area within an hour of receiving the wound. That's why helicopter medevacs are so common and so well known and what's sought after by modern militaries. We also see that war crimes are quickly turning into crimes against humanity, as at this point, according to the Prosecutor General's office, quote, since the beginning of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, Russian troops have committed more than 19,700 crimes against Ukraine and its citizens. That's an insane amount of war crimes. A lot of them have already been sent to the International Criminal Court there in The Hague. And that's currently what's ongoing here. I mean, there's just a ton of war crimes that have committed, and both sides have committed war crimes. We've talked about that before. We know that Ukrainian forces have committed war crimes. The UN is aware that the Ukraine has committed war crimes. The OSCE report we covered even documented war crimes that have been committed by Ukrainian forces. But the vast overwhelming majority, according to the OSCE report, and according to the reports that we've seen here, that we've given to you guys, we're seeing a massive amount of Russian crimes, almost to the point that it's become systematic. And that's really where something deviates from just a war crime into turning into a war, turning into a crime against humanity, is the fact that a crime against humanity is something that is systematically done in under direction, whereas just a war crime is something that an individual was to do. It just happens to break the Geneva Convention. So that's kind of what we're seeing here, and that's kind of what these numbers lead us to believe. That's what the reports lead us to believe, and that's what the international community at large is pretty much kind of moving towards. The International Criminal Court has not concluded its investigation. Only the OSC has. There is a large number of investigative teams from multiple nations on the ground there, including members of the International Criminal Court's teams who are currently independently investigating the situation within Ukraine and the areas that they are capable of going to. But likely, most of these reports will not be finalized, and we won't be able to get to see them for some time, even after the war ends. And that's just the unfortunate reality of these things, is to an extent we will never truly know, more than likely. As we jump up here into kind of this northern region, it's a pretty deadly harvest up here. That's kind of what's getting ready to occur as Ukrainian farmers are beginning to kind of think ahead. They've sowed their fields, they're waiting on the crops to grow, all of that. But eventually they're going to have to go out there and harvest them. And now all of this unexploded ordnance is actually buried in the mud and underneath and now is covered and essentially invisible because of the growth of the crops. And so it makes it extremely dangerous for Ukrainian farmers. And now we see EOD teams starting to go out there online with their metal detectors and just start going out there and searching for all of this unexploded ordnance that a little over 2.5 months ago was an active war zone between Ukrainian and Russian forces. But we can go ahead and take a look at this here. This is coming from the Defense Ministry of Ukraine. And so as we move down here and we move down to the Sumy Oblast, we see that Russian shelling continues here in the north. So according to Dmytro Zavetsky, who's the head of the Sumy Regional Military Administration, due to Russian shelling in the Sumy region on June 26, one citizen was killed and one was injured. Local private farm buildings, a water tower, and a farm were damaged. So these regions are still, Chernihiv, Sumy, all of these regions are still receiving shelling, despite the fact that Russian troops may not be active within those regions. But down here in Kharkiv, we see that we see it pretty extensively. Kharkiv is really center focus on Russian shelling within this part of the region and within this part of the Donbass. Despite the fact that there's no tactical or strategic really importance of Kharkiv at this point, any chance that Russian forces had at taking Kharkiv is long gone at this point in the war. And we have a couple of different quotes. So first quote is here from Oleh Sunyabov, the head of the Kharkiv Regional Military Administration, and he states that, quote, due to Russian shelling in the Kharkiv region on June 26, 2 women were killed, 5 citizens were injured. Local residential buildings and outbuildings, a street gas pipeline, a school, and an administrative building were damaged. Once again, he's quoted saying, Russian aggressors have shelled the district of North Saltivka in Kharkiv on June 27th. 5 citizens were killed, 22 citizens were injured, including 5 children. According to Sergei Bolvinov, the head of the investigative department and the main directorate of the National Police in the Kharkiv regions, is quoted stating, Russian aggressors have shelled the district of North Saltivka and Kharkiv on June 27th. 9 citizens were killed, 29 citizens were injured, including 5 children. And once again, the head of the Kharkiv Regional Military Administration quoted saying, Russian occupiers fired missiles in the industrial district in Kharkiv on June 28th. 5 citizens were injured. As a result of the shelling, a fire broke out in one of the city's enterprises, meaning one of their businesses. So Kharkiv is just basically getting hit every single day, and we see that over and over again. A lot of these are from cruise missiles attacks, Iskander missiles that are fired from in and around the Belgorod Oblast. It also comes from cruise missiles that are launched from the air, from some of those high-level bombers that Russia has. They've started using those. I think it's called the XM22, I think is one of them, or XM25, something like that. I'm not an expert in Russian cruise missiles, guys. I just know a little bit of basics there. And as we jump over here, we actually can check out Lysychansk, which has had some pretty significant developments. So major shelling over civilian areas at this point, and Ukrainian troops may be retreating. This is something that we're already kind of aware of, and now it's just becoming more and more is coming out that this is probably happening. This is not confirmed by anybody at this point, just to be sure. Just to let you guys know. So some of this is not confirmed. Some of this is just what we're hearing at this point. But what we do know is that people were out and getting water, and that basically they dropped cluster munitions on them here in Lysychansk. They're in line for food and water, and 8 people were killed, 21 were wounded, including 2 children. And they were using, once again, cluster munitions. So, but there's currently rumors of a tactical withdrawal of Ukrainian forces. And the reason why is because the Luhansk region is a pocket. The Luhansk region is just a pocket. If you take a look here, you can really see the front lines. I mean, relatively speaking, there you have some curves in there, and keep in mind this thing is really moving like a guitar string. It's vibrating back and forth as troops try to outmaneuver each other. But what you're seeing is here, there's a break in it, and you have a bulge, and this is the Luhansk region. They want to defend the Luhansk region. This is one of the goals of the Russian Federation, is to take the entirety of the Luhansk region, which is a lot more reasonable than trying to take all of the Donetsk Oblast, because there's a lot less of the Luhansk Oblast to take that's left than there is of the Donetsk Oblast. But we can see that here. They're pushing on this area on 9 axes of advance, which means there are 9 different points in which Russian forces are pushing here, and we'll get to one of them here shortly. But that's why we're seeing Ukrainian forces withdraw. That's why they withdrew out of Severodonetsk. That and supply issues they were running into because the main bridges across the Seversky Donetsk River were blown. They were destroyed, no longer capable of being used. And so they're retreating back to better defensive positions. Lysychansk has been under pretty much constant bombardment since the Russian forces got too close to really call in artillery in the majority of Severodonetsk, and we really started to see them shifting fires. Coming from Sergei Haida, the head of the Luhansk Regional Military Administration, Russian troops have shelled a crowd of people who stood in line for water in Lysychansk in the Luhansk region. 8 people were killed and 21 citizens injured. There are children among the victims. Russian aggressors used cluster shells banned by the international conventions, and that is what he is stating about the situation there in Lysychansk. Let me take a look here. And here's some of the photos from that. Lysychansk is just essentially destroyed. Pretty much, you could say that about every single town that Russia has pretty much gone through at this point. And the fighting continues here in the Luhansk region, though. Even though we are hearing the word about Ukrainian forces possibly tactically withdrawing, the fighting is still ongoing. It's a tactical withdrawal. It's not a retreat. It's not a rout. But we're seeing that here. This is footage from the International Legion fighting here in the Luhansk region, really in and around the areas of Severodonetsk. We could not verify quite how old this was. I've heard that this is from the Battle of Severodonetsk, which is possible. We know that these guys were operating in Severodonetsk. This looks like it's all either on the outskirts of the city right before the official word that they had retreated, or outside of Lysychansk here, but very recent footage at the very least for you guys.
Window full. Fuck.
Roger, holding fire.
Isaac, you gonna send that in first?
Yeah. Ready? 1, 2, go! Ready? No? Let's go.
So a lot of that looked like it was some stuff out of Severodonetsk. Unfortunately, when it comes to a lot of this kind of stuff, it gets released relatively late, and a lot of that is for good reason. When you're talking about active fighting in these regions, you're talking about stuff that is operational security important, OPSEC. So you don't want to release that information right away. Unfortunately, we're going to see probably a lot more footage out of Severodonetsk that just hasn't popped up, despite the fact that the city has fallen. But I think it's important to see that kind of aspect of the war, really, so you can kind of get a feel as, hey, this is how the war's actually fought. It's not just these giant artillery barrages or tanks being blown up. It's a lot of infantry fighting and guys moving around there in the city and in the field. So, but there also, war also seems to breed a lot of ingenuity, whether that's to make your life better or to make your job easier. And this guy, we see this with M320s, but these are the Russian variants. I think this is called the GPG-25. I'm not quite sure. Someone can correct me on that. Once again, I'm not an expert on Russian weapons. But this is the underbarrel grenade launcher for the Russian forces. And they mounted a stock onto it so you can just fire it from the hip. Once again, we see these with other grenade launcher systems, but this is pretty dope. Why not? I mean, why not? Why have the heavy thing on your rifle when you can just use it on its own? And the war, this is starting, the total disregard for what is being hit by the Russian forces really, it irks me on a personal level. But aside from that, it's, the war on Ukrainian culture just kind of continues. And we see that to a pretty large extent in a lot of different realms, and I'm not going to get too far into it here. But this is a quote this is Austin from Sergei Haidai, who is the head of the Luhansk Regional Military Administration. And he says, quote, "Since the beginning of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, Russian troops have destroyed 14 and have damaged 47 cultural institutions and architectural monuments in the Luhansk region." Some of that is total disregard for shelling. Some of that could entirely be purposeful as well. As we move over here, this is Zolote. Zolote has, and we did recently move the map for this episode regarding this. Zolote has been captured by Russian forces. We actually see Russian forces in this video moving through Zolote. This is from their perspective. This pocket especially is being pretty heavily pushed and is at very high risk of being encircled. Whatever troops are between really Mykolaievka and over here probably towards, let's see, Chashkivka. As far as our knowledge is concerned, I have heard that they have pushed much further. I haven't seen enough information to say that personally. We just don't have enough information from this specific target region to be able to tell you that information. So we're going to keep it here until we get enough information otherwise. But we do have enough information to say independently that Zolote has fallen. And here we see Russian troops passing through Zolote. And it's a massive amount of damage. It's a massive amount of damage. Like I said, every single city that Russia seems to end up capturing and going through or assaulting just ends up leveled and destroyed without failure. And it doesn't even have to be, it doesn't even sometimes have to be the fact that they're rolling through it or there's any resistance. They just shell cities, it seems. And we're seeing that with Kharkiv. We're seeing that with all of the region. We'll get to some of that a little bit here later. But yeah, it's pretty bad. But let's just take a look at this. This is from Zolote here very recently. It looks like today. Short video for you guys, but that is Zolote as of right now. Zolote, we know, had some pretty heavy combat in and around that area. And we see here a Ka-52 was shut down with a Martlet here somewhere on the eastern front, and we can take a look at that here. Pretty good shot, I have to say the least. It's so far away that you see where it's at, but you can't quite see where it crashes. But yeah, it went down. It went down fast. We'll take a look.
Давай.
Yes!
Попав!
Попав! Попав же ж?
Попав, але вона йде на зниження.
Попав, сука!
Попав, зараз подивимося, буде дим.
Подбив, походу, не в'їбав, подбив.
Да.
Considering how steeply that helicopter started going down, I would say that was probably unrecoverable on the part of the pilot. So that helicopter is down for the count. Major development over here. This is in the city of Petrovolsk, and this is where a massive ammunition depot was hit. So this is a huge area. It's the fact this thing's like 50 kilometers behind the front line. So this had to have been HIMARS. Had to have been a HIMARS shoot. Apparently 2 battalion tactical groups were in these locations. This is actually geolocated to where the location was. We got the geolocated footage for this. But these are the positions of these 2 tactical groups, and it's pretty insane. I mean, the amount of destruction you can just see here.
Заебись.
Вон, сбили, видишь?
Угу. Заебись.
So apparently that was an Iskander stockpile, and we can actually see here. So this is the satellite imagery of some of the strikes that occurred. Pretty wild. This is one of the smaller strikes. This is obviously that huge one that we were seeing earlier, but you can see here, this is that satellite footage showing you really what's happening down there from above. So pretty huge strike. So yeah, so those were rumored to have been an Iskander stockpile. We see here, morale has, morale played a big factor, and we talked about this before. Morale in the Russian forces and discipline is really low. I mean, exorbitantly low. Like, I thought I've been depressed in the field. No, these guys have absolutely no morale left. And so they drink. And they commit lots and lots of war crimes. But they drink heavily. They barrack themselves inside of schools and all of this stuff. And then, of course, that gives the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs something to say when Ukraine hits a school. But here are a bunch of Russian troops inside of a school where they're sleeping and they're living. Drunk. I mean, absolutely drunk. So just take a look at this. I'm sorry if you hate the instrument also known as the accordion. The Russians, everyone. The feared Russian army. Oh my god. Listen, the last thing you should ever do is get absolutely hammered in a combat zone. It's just terrible for you. Also, it's going to dehydrate you. And these guys can't even get, they can't get ammunition to the front lines because it keeps getting blown up, let alone food, water, and everything else. These guys have essentially zero logistical capability as a military force. And now you're going to be absolutely hammered and dehydrated and have to go fight the Ukrainians who are already significantly better in shape, tactically speaking, than you ever will be. So yeah, you're just screwed. So I don't know. Calms the nerves, I guess. Here in Donetsk, the referendum has been announced to take place on September the 11th in order for Donetsk, also known as the DPR, according to the Russians, to join the Russian Federation. And we're getting this from Euromaiden. And this is coming from Mariupol's aide to the he's the advisor to the president, or to the mayor of Mariupol, not the president of Mariupol. But so that's coming from him. He is reportedly still in Mariupol. We jump up here into Dnipro, where not even a gas station is safe. So this is coming from Boris Filatov, who's the mayor of Dnipro. And he said a rocket attack on a car station in the city of Dnipro in the Dniprovets Oblast. There are victims under the rubble. Rescuers are putting out a fire at the moment. And what most people are probably here, and this is the title of the video, this is the missile attack that occurred in KREMENCHUK. So it's just a terror attack, guys. It really is. It's just a terror attack. But The KH-22 missile, which is an air-launched cruise missile, it's a 5,800 kilogram anti-ship missile. It's about 60 years old. It's very inaccurate. And it hit a shopping mall yesterday, a very busy one. In fact, nearly 1,000 people were inside of it. 18 people are dead, 36 are missing, and 59 are injured as of the latest report that we got from this video. Many inconsistencies in Kremenchuk. Looks like a provocation a la Bucha, says Russia's deputy permanent representative to Russia to the United Nations. The Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, also added, the Ukrainians can end everything today. They just need to order Ukrainian troops to lay down their weapons and fulfill Russia's conditions, and it'll all be over. You can take a look here. There's a lot of stuff that we just couldn't show here. But this was actually shared by President Zelensky himself. And this is the CCTV footage from the actual strike. So you can see that missile actually coming in and hitting this place. Absolutely massive strike. And a massive fire broke out as a result, as we can see here.
Kyiv Diary Day 125 of Vladimir Putin's war. KREMENCHUK. This is the shopping mall that was hit by the Russian missile. The air raid siren sounded, 1,000 people were in it. A lot of them left, thank God. 18 people have been found dead, another 40 or so are missing, presumed dead. The Russian missile was an X-22. The rocket system was first launched in 1962. Yes, that's right, 60 years old. The probable target wasn't here because this is a catastrophe for the Kremlin. The probable target was either the oil refinery, which is close by, 10 miles away, or the bridge, which is maybe a mile away. Whatever. This is a war crime. To send a hopelessly inaccurate 60-year-old rocket system against a city of 200,000 people is a war crime. So, what are we going to do about this?
Morning, Robin.
And we're seeing this pretty much, it's on every, this is Good Morning America, you know, here we have the on UA struggle from inside the shopping mall. Let's take a look.
Так, это что,
The ongoing rescue efforts here at the mall, and it is just completely destroyed. And this is found a little bit later after we found the rest of this. The Russian Ministry of Defense was quoted by the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and it stated in an official tweet that it hit hangars in Kremenchuk, which holding arms and ammunition delivered by the United States. It had been sent to, and it had set fire to an unused shopping mall. Twitter did put up a notice that the tweet was misinformation, misleading. However, they stated that it would be left up for viewing based on the basis of accountability purposes. And take a look at this. So as we can see, this tweet violated Twitter's rules on sharing false or misleading info that can bring harm to crisis-affected populations. However, to preserve this content for accountability purposes, Twitter has determined this tweet should remain available. Russian Ministry of Defense is coming from the official Twitter of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Russian aerospace forces performed high-precision air attack at hangars with armament and munitions delivered by the USA and Europe located in Kremenchuk road machinery plant. Detonation of munitions caused a fire in a non-functioning shopping mall. This is why we do look for stuff coming out of the Russian Federation. But this is why that we have a bias regarding what's going on in Ukraine. And this isn't new news. This happened yesterday. This post was at 6:20 a.m. Eastern Time on June the 28th, this morning. Long after the news of the actual attack on Kremenchuk had come out. This is why we have a plainly stated bias regarding the war in Ukraine. This is why we cannot morally support in any way, shape, or form the Russian Federation's cause or any separatists that they may be backing. This is why. This is why I have no problem with siding with Ukraine whatsoever. You just saw the videos. They came out yesterday before this even was posted. Yesterday. This came from today. So if you are someone who backs the Russian Federation or just try to being understanding to the Russians, I hate to break it to you, but you're being lied to. In every sense of the word. That's the truth to this whole endeavor. That is the blatant truth. Unfiltered, uncategorized. I had my personal opinions, but I was at least open-minded to start this channel. When we all went together and decided to start this channel, we maintained no bias for Ukraine until we said until we stayed straight here that we did have an open bias towards the war in Ukraine regarding Ukraine. We were biased to Ukraine. And it's not because of, it's not because we live in a Western country or any of that. It's because you only have to look at the videos every single day and see the hundreds and hundreds of dead and dying and wounded so long. You can only watch the war crimes personally for so long, many of which do not make it onto this channel because they're so graphic and horrific that I do not wish anybody to have to see them. And the death and destruction at an unprecedented scale, and that's coming from someone who's deployed to the Middle East twice. To the deadliest country in the world, up until I would say this point. I cannot, in any way, shape, or form, back the Russian Federation. First, it was Kramatorsk. They said that they didn't even have Tochka use. You can go back and watch that video. We know that they did. We had six separate times where we showed that they did have Tochka use systems. And now you can watch this. We jump down here into Mariupol, a city that is only in existence in name. And 100 more people were reportedly found dead, according to Petro Andrushenko, who's the advisor to the mayor of Mariupol. He says, quote, more than 100 bodies of dead civilians have been found under the rubble of a destroyed residential building by Russian occupiers in Mariupol. Death toll continues to rise as thousands of people are being interred in mass graves with no name, but simply a number, in many mass grave sites surrounding the city of Mariupol, since the gas supply was cut after the incessant shelling of the city, mercilessly, that destroyed all of it. They ended up not being able to use any of the 13 mobile crematoriums they brought into the city to use for that single purpose. And there's no help, but only suffering for the residents of Mariupol. As according to the press service of the Mariupol City Council, there is an acute shortage of drinking water and food in the occupied by Russian troops in Mariupol. Residents of the city are forced to hunt pigeons and collect rainwater. We've also seen them collecting rainwater in craters, poisoned by the decomposing bodies laid buried underneath the rubble. There's also currently a cholera outbreak in Mariupol that is likely going to kill even more people. In Berdyansk, we see here at the port once again another explosion, likely the work of partisans, which remain very highly active within this region. The port has actually been a continual major target here in this region. It's a major point for more Russian forces to flow into the country, more heavy supplies to be brought in via ship into the southern region. We can see that here. So this is the blast that occurred here on the pier of Berdyansk today. Once again, here's that photo of the explosion at the end of the pier. Let's jump over here into the Kherson Oblast. We can see that today is Constitution Day in Ukraine, where Ukraine adopted its constitution in 1996, and in celebration of that, the partisans within the occupied regions have been really active and put out notices saying we continue to work in the territories temporarily occupied by you, Erdogan, Enerhodar, Berdyansk, Melitopol, Novokakova, Tavrisk, and Tokmak are Ukraine. You can see that here. This is reposted by the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. And if it would like to load, I would like to show you. So here you go. These are some of the postings that have been put up. And they are everywhere. In any way they can do it. So the partisans active, they call them terrorists in these regions. If you get it from things like Taznu or Riva Nostrovy or any of that's usually where we hear about the partisans. That's because they report them as terror attacks on local government officials. They're partisans that are in occupied territory. As you come over here, the Russian terror attacks really continue because they're shelling places that just have no point in being shelled, including this city. This is the city of Ochakiv. And it says that Russian occupiers fired missiles at the city of Ochakiv in the Mykolaiv region on June 28th. 3 people were killed, including 1 child. 6 citizens were injured. There are 4 children among them. The city markets territory, the Palace of Culture building, a private sector, 2 residential buildings were directly hit, were damaged. And this is coming from Vitaly Kim, the head of the Mykolaiv Regional Military Administration. As we come over here into Odessa, Odessa just keeps receiving lots of presents with love from the Black Sea Fleet. In fact, just today, Ukrainian air defense forces shot down a Russian missile in the Odessa region. That's coming from Sergei Bratchuk, who's the spokesman of the Odessa Regional Military Administration. It's not the only thing happening, though. One thing did happen that had nothing to do with the war, which is rather weird for Ukraine at this point. That's about the only news we usually get. More than 700 houses were flooded in Crimea in 3 days as a result of very heavy rains, said the head of the Republic of Crimea, Sergei Aksanov. Abnormal downpours in the Bakhchisari Simferopol and Belogorsk regions and Alushta still are not stopping. A state of emergency on a municipal scale was introduced for these regions due to the consequences of the bad weather, and we can take a look at that here. I mean, really, I mean, it was higher for this guy at one point, but yeah, pretty major flooding in these regions. So, pretty major flooding there in the Crimean Peninsula. But that is all of the news inside of Ukraine. A lot of it's not stuff that I really enjoy reporting on, but the news is the news, and it's important for us to still get that stuff out. And hopefully the situation does improve here in Ukraine in the near future. But there's a lot of news outside of Ukraine, and a lot of it has to do with the ongoing war in Ukraine and a lot of the stuff, you know, surrounding and the effects of the war. So we're actually going to go ahead and jump up here, and that's because we jump up here into Belarus, where local markets have already begun here in Belarus to sell stolen goods out of Ukraine, such as Kherson tomatoes, as they have them labeled, and Melitopol cherries. Take a look. Melitopol cherries and Kherson tomatoes. These are stolen goods out of Ukraine. Like, it's pillaging. Pillaging's a war crime. If it's systematic, it's a crime against humanity. These things don't get to Belarus because in a large scale unless it's a crime against humanity. We jump up here into Moscow. Russia has officially stated that they have defaulted on their foreign debt. So as a result, so this is the first time since 1918 that the country has resulted in default. The country runs a huge trade surplus predominantly because of lucrative oil exports and relatively low debt levels. They say this won't affect them in a significant manner because it's just to ensure that because it will just ensure their economy kind of remains stagnant, because now they are considered at risk for lenders on the international scale. The reason for this is because they have refused to pay it in foreign exchange currency and will only pay it in rubles, as they just signed a brand new law, which we ended up covering here. And we can see this here coming from the New York Times. And if you want to see the last debt that they've had really for a long period of time, going back to 2017, we can see it here, how their market goes ups and downs, and this is where we're currently sitting right here is at 53.5. The last time it was at this low is at the beginning of 2020, when the beginning of the pandemic hit. Another opposition politician has been detained in Russia, Ilya Yashin, which on March the 7th refused to flee the country due to the censorship laws. Now has been caught. It has been caught and arrested for supposedly assaulting a police sniper. He's clarified there was no such event that happened, and they also picked him up and arrested him on his birthday of all days. You can see that here. So Russia is pretty notorious for this. They are pretty notorious for jailing opposition. One of the main things that makes them an authoritarian state. And Russia also defended its right to veto at the UN Security Council. So we can take a look at this. This is a direct quote. This is coming from the Russia at the United Nations, their official Twitter page. And they say, and this is coming from their current representative, Astigneva, who stated the issue of veto right does not belong with the United Nations Security Council working methods, but rather constitutes a cornerstone of the entire Security Council architecture and the prerequisite which makes the Council able to make well-balanced decisions. Except it's not, because Russia shouldn't be able to veto. And the reason why is actually listed here. So this is the official UN Charter. I pulled it directly off their website, and according to Article 27, Paragraph 3, which is right here, so this is regarding the UN Security Council. Each member, Paragraph 1, each member of the Security Council shall have one vote. Paragraph 2, decisions of the Security Council on procedural matters shall be made by an affirmative vote of 9 member states. in number 3, paragraph 3, and the most important one, the decisions of the Security Council on all matters shall be made by an affirmative vote of 9 members, including the concurring votes of the permanent members, provided that in the decisions under Chapter 4, under paragraph 3, Article 52, a party to a dispute shall abstain from voting. This right here, this section right here, provided that in the decisions under Chapter 4 or Chapter 6, sorry, under paragraph 3 from Article 52, a party to a dispute shall abstain from voting. The party to the dispute, currently speaking, is the Permanent Security Council member state of Russia. Rooster Cyburn says the UN Security Council is a joke. No, the UN Security Council just is not enforcing the articles. And we can go down here under Article 52. Let's see here. Chapter 6, Article 52. Wait a second. Interesting. Anyway, so as we continue here. So, what does that mean? It means that you have to abstain. Russia has to abstain. They have no veto. They have to abstain because they have to dispute the UN Security Council. They can't dispute it. What laws or rules does Russia follow? They follow none of them. That's the problem. They don't follow any of them. Russia is in pretty much every regard a terrorist state. That's not even just like out of a personal opinion, though you could say that. That's just the fact. I mean, at this point, blatant systematic war crimes, blatant systematic pillaging, which is the war crime. You could really hamper that on. You're talking about massive amounts of war crimes. When something, there's a point in which something's just a really bad tragedy. World War I was an absolute tragedy of a war, but it wasn't genocide. You can't. A lot of people died, but it's not a genocide, right? It's a world war. World War I. The Great War, the war to end all wars. And a lot of the stuff that happened during World War I brought around things that would be, the use of chemical weapons. Outlawed by the Geneva Convention. That's a direct result of the horrific stuff that happened during World War I. You're talking about, not shelling cities. World War II, the Fourth Geneva Convention, the Geneva Convention of 1948, specifically occurred because of World War II, but more importantly, it really outlined the rights of civilians, as a result of World War II, because of the horrific things like the Holocaust and the rape of Nanking and stuff like that, where genocide was not coined up until after World War II. It had to be created as a word in order to describe the atrocities of the Holocaust. This has gone far past just a tragedy and has moved into, when you go past a tragedy, what are you looking at? You're looking at either, at the very minimum, kind of like ethnic cleansing, which means that ethnic cleansing is different from genocide in the fact that you aren't preventing the escape of people, which to an extent you could say that Russia is with forced deportation, but they're not preventing the escape of a people. You're just trying to get them out of an area that you wish to control and repopulate with your own ethnic or nationality. The coinage for genocide means you prevent their escape. Which is what happened, to the Jewish population. They were prevented from escaping. They were rounded up, and then they were massacred. So, coming from KSN, judging by the language G7 and NATO has been pushing using past few days, I think this is quite a possibility. Diplomacy is clearly out the window, especially when the G7 mocked Putin on TV. Yeah, that was pretty funny. Watching them mock them, should we just take, shirts on or off, are we going to ride a bear shirtless or something? It was kind of funny. And the Russians pointed out, oh, this is how the world acts, this is how the Western elite are going to act. And you know, it's all fun and games, but you can't get, butthurt over them making fun of your president when you do it on your national TV all the time. You committing egregious amount of war crimes. I mean, outrageous amount of war crimes. I mean, sure, you can say, oh, well, 42,000 civilians were killed in Afghanistan. Yeah, you're right, but it was over 20 years, and we didn't commit genocide in Afghanistan. At no point did we commit genocide. Like, there wasn't, like, war crimes. It was a tragedy. It's a tragedy. 100% it's a tragedy. What happened at the end of Afghanistan was a tragedy. Iraq was a tragedy. And there were certainly things, the massacre of Haditha. I mean, that's absolutely horrific and definitely a war crime. I mean, that's what happened to Blackwater. Blackwater went completely under because of litigation, because of that, and the prosecution. And then they got brought out by Triple Canopy, and I think they're someone else now. But those are tragedies. This is systematic. This is being done on a systematic level. And that's what makes this past a tragedy. That when you go past a tragedy, that's when something is extremely wrong. As we get on here into Kursk, there have been several explosions at a Kursk air base, where reportedly this is where a lot of Russian strategic bombers are currently located here near Kursk, and that these are the strategic bombers that have targeted many different civilian populations, including, this is reportedly where the aircraft that fired at KREMENCHUK, that fired that missile at KREMENCHUK, actually ended up coming from. You can take a look here. Looks like there's some electrical sparking going over there. You can usually tell electrical sparking because it's going to go blue. It's going to be that bluish light. If you've ever seen photos of tornadoes hitting power lines or something, you'll kind of understand that. But several explosions there at the Kursk airfield. We do not know what the cause is at this point. Not enough information to say if it was Ukraine or not. As you jump down here into Grozny here in Chechnya, Kadyrov received a rather questionable award as he received the Order of Merit for Dentistry in the first class. After Kadyrov opened a new dental clinic there, and this was presented by the dental, basically like their dental institution. This man is not a dentist. He's not a dentist. I mean, come on. No. Besides, have you seen his teeth? No. No. He's not a dentist, folks. Over here in Europe, there's a pretty interesting thing, and this is right after Kremenchuk. A U.S. Air Force F-35 was seen conducting recon all over Europe, and there's been a lot of American activity, U.S. aircraft activity. Most of the time, the F-35 does not fly with its transponder on, which is really, really weird. For this, I mean, it's supposed to be a stealth fighter, so why would you fly with your transponder on, especially when there's what we can really realistically consider hostile nations right next to you. But yeah, there is a noted F-35 in the airspace right here next to the Black Sea. So pretty interesting, to say the least. Pretty cool. It's really cool. If you guys have never checked it out, this is Flight Radar 24. They actually track the live feeds coming off of transponders from all over the world, and you guys can see every aircraft essentially in flight, and you can even tell when it turns its transponder off. I've followed this before. It's pretty cool. It gives their call signs, tells you what kind of aircraft that they are, their registration, their based off their transponder, what their altitude is, who operates it, and as you can see, Beechcraft, not registered. That means it's a government aircraft. KC-135R Stratotanker. Yeah, it's American. United States Air Force. U.S. Air Force. KC-130 Stratotanker. KC-35 Rivet Joint. That's a... I want to say that's a transportation aircraft. Or it might be a... it might be an intelligence aircraft. But F-35 Lightning II. Obviously a fighter aircraft, and an RQB Global Hawk. So... pretty cool. A lot of activity from American aircraft. I've seen a lot of activity from American aircraft for quite some time over Europe, but that many all at once is kind of it's kind of a weird outlier. Jump over here over to the G7 meeting, and there's been a lot of things, but they're calling on China at this point. G7 has to put pressure on Russia and to withdraw its troops out of or to have Russia withdraw its troops out of Ukraine. And that is the G7 meeting right there with all of the different national leaders. And immediately to follow up that, we jump down here where out of Madrid, out of Spain, this is where the NATO summit is currently ongoing. And so we have a couple of different things here. So the first thing that we heard is the fact that NATO plans to increase its response force from 40,000 troops to well over 300,000 troops. To give you an idea, the U.S. invasion force of the Iraq War is 449,000 troops. The Russian military and the Ukrainian military both fielded 200 and something thousand troops, like 210,000 troops on both sides of the conflict. Over 300,000 troops due to the Russian aggression. And this really comes to light as rising tensions between Lithuania and Russia have come into focus over the NATO sanction enforcement. Yesterday they reported a cyber attack from Russia as well, which technically could trigger the Article 5, but it hasn't. No one has called for it at this point. This is Stoltenberg, who is the head of NATO here.
We will enhance our battle groups in the eastern part of the alliance up to brigade levels. We will transform the NATO response force and increase the number of our high readiness forces to well over 300,000. We will also boost our ability to reinforce in crisis and conflict, including with more pre-positioned equipment and stockpiles of military supplies. We will enhance our battle.
That's a huge increase. A huge increase of troops. Killnet launches a cyber attack against the Lithuanian state and private institutions. So that's what this is reporting. This is from Samuel Romani. I mean, that's a huge increase of troops. So, so interesting topic you bring up. I believe the F-35 would be required to have a transponder on when transitioning through commercial airspace in Europe. Yes and no. So having your transponder on is basically putting a beacon on yourself. And you see a lot of if a military aircraft is using civilian commercial flight lanes, they would. But in general speaking, this is when the F-35 is not really, you're not really going to be showing where your F-35s are. Your F-35 is a 5th generation fighter. It's the newest aircraft that the United States has produced. It's in limited quantities, but it's a very capable aircraft. And these things are, you don't want to show where they're coming from, where they're going, or any of that. You don't want Russia to know exactly where they're stationed. These things, if I remember correctly, are actually capable of carrying a tactical nuclear payload as well. So this is really, having a transponder on for the F-35 is really saying to Russia, hey, like, we have these here. Like, just so you know, the F-35 is in Europe, and we are very willing to use this. And the second thing is that it's operational security. Europe is, without being declaredly in it, and without NATO troops going into direct combat with Russia, effectively at war. And this means that all NATO forces inside of the NATO alliance are in their security posture. This is the highest readiness NATO has ever been in its creation, including all 80 years of the Cold War. So they are operating in a very much a military combat capacity. These guys are ready to go. They are ready to maneuver. They're ready to fight. They are at a moment's notice. Anything could happen and war could break out. That's kind of the positioning and kind of the mindset of military forces inside of Europe. So no, they're not going to have their transponders on. I'm not seeing F-35 transponders in Syria. This is a military mission. They are conducting military operations, and therefore they are not going to have their transponders on. They're going to be using military lanes, military frequencies, and I'm sure that there is some coordination at a government level to the other airspaces, but I'm sure Poland, Germany, Czechia, Slovakia, Hungary, all of them are aware that there are military aircraft flying in the air without their transponders. I'm sure that has been communicated, but you will not see a lot of these aircraft flying with transponders. You don't see Air Force One usually flying around with this transponder on. You don't want to broadcast the entire planet where the president of the United States is, because that makes him a target. That is correct. Also, cluster munitions are not bans for Russia, the United States, or Ukraine. They are not signatories to the agreement. That is correct. The United States is also not signatories of the Ottawa Agreement, which actually bans the use of self-triggered landmines. So cluster munitions are pretty horrific in their light. That's why a lot of places are signatories of them, with the big three being that. I believe China may have fallen under that as well. But you are correct. They are not signatories. But it is a war crime. And the reason it's a war crime, despite why Sergei Haida may have stated, and he did incorrectly state that, it's not because they're cluster munitions. It's not the munitions you use, it's how you use it, right? So what's banned under the Geneva Convention is really a couple of different things. First of all, the indiscriminate use on civilian targets, noted civilian targets. That is a war crime in and of itself. However, that doesn't mean that you can't go and bomb a house in a town. You certainly can do that. The U.S. has done it. Everyone has done it. And that's why you have precision guided munitions. Otherwise, you would just carpet bomb, previously where you could carpet bomb everything else, so you could just take a missile and you could fire it into someone's house. Laser guided munitions, precision munitions. The reason why precision munitions are so important and why they're being used in that capacity, and why they have to be used in that capacity as the only munition you can use, is because it's a catch-all, and that is the fact that military planners and commanders on the ground and all military personnel have to take considerations into the types of munitions they're using during their operation. Under the Geneva Convention, the Fourth Geneva Convention in 1948, military planners are required to mitigate damage to civilian infrastructure, civilian property, and civilian life. So, meaning that you can't just use BM-21s and level the entire town, because you have to mitigate their risk. If the risk of civilian destruction and collateral damage is excessive, then that is considered a war crime under the Geneva Convention, to know it is excessive and then therefore continue what you're doing. And if you don't believe me, I highly recommend you can read up on the on the 1948 Geneva Convention. Highly recommend it. It really, because you hear war crime thrown around a lot throughout the world. This is a war crime, this is a war crime. No, what's actually a war crime under Geneva Convention? You have the Geneva Convention in 1948, which is the fourth iteration of the Geneva Conventions. And then you also have 3 additional protocols, the Protocol 1, 2, and 3. The first one, I believe, was accepted in 72. And then the last one was accepted in 1980. And all of those are signatories under those Geneva Conventions. Those cover a very wide range of topics, including the use of incendiary munitions within civilian populations. The rest of that falls under international customary humanitarian law, and you can check out those rules on the ICRC's website if you wish, and I highly encourage you to go do that as well. There's a lot of rules to international law, but we've actually broadcasted here on the channel and showed you some of those if you want to go back and check out those prior streams as well. Or the maps are also on our new website, so you guys can go check it out there too. And as we jump up here, or as we continue with NATO, because we have a couple of other things, U.S. President Joe Biden made a specific statement at the NATO summit regarding the buildup of U.S. forces in Europe. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says, according to CNN, "I can confirm that we are, in fact, in the process of finalizing a package that includes advanced air defense capabilities," according to the U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. And then the breaking news of today is the fact that Turkey has unblocked Finland and Sweden's NATO membership. And Turkey, Sweden, and Finland all signed a memorandum on the roadway for NATO for the bid for those two countries, meaning that's the last hurdle for those two countries to join NATO. Turkey will now support Finland and Sweden joining the NATO bloc. That brings the official member country number up to official count of 32 once that final vote is passed during this summit. So that is the last major hurdle. That's the one everyone's been worried about. We can see that here. So this is a 49-minute long video, and I don't think that we want to watch this whole thing, do we? But let's see here. Lots of questions. Okay, but let's see if I can find any of this. It wants to load. It's a 49-minute long video, guys. This is not. I'm really do not want the stream to run that long. Anyway, you guys can go check it out. So, Oana Legascu, who's from the NATO press. If you guys want to go check it out. But yeah, so anyway, Turkey will allow Finland and Sweden to join NATO. That brings the official number up to 32 once the vote has been finalized. More help is on the way as France has announced a large number of donation of armored personnel carriers to the country of Ukraine. Just hours after the announcement, they were already spotted on their way in Slovakia. So that's pretty cool. We can take a look at that here. So, pretty cool. Sorry, this has copyright music to this, but you can already see those APCs are just rolling. They're all headed over to Ukraine. And you see this constantly. We're seeing constant convoys rolling into the country of Ukraine and through NATO countries with supplies and equipment heading their way. And that's just getting heavier and heavier and heavier. I'm talking, much larger stockpiles of equipment, a lot more NATO equipment. So hopefully we will continue to see that. As you can see, this convoy just keeps going down the line. And we jump up here to Belgium, where drugs and nukes definitely don't mix. Belgian police have raided an illegal lab producing the rave drug ecstasy on an airbase that reportedly houses the U.S. nuclear arsenal in Belgium, coming from The Guardian. Yeah, drugs and nukes usually don't mix, guys. Jump down here to Istanbul. Baykar Defense is going to give Ukraine 3 Bayraktars for free. The Turkish company Baykar was very impressed with everyone donating to the Bayraktari, which is a fundraiser that was ongoing. Baykar will not accept the payment for TB2 and will send 3 UAVs free of charge to the Ukrainian war front. We ask that the raised funds be remitted instead to the struggling people of Ukraine. We are touched by their solidarity and determination in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, which is pretty awesome. And this is coming directly from Baykar. So pretty cool. That was a really big fundraiser. A lot of people have raised a lot of funds for sending Bayraktars over to Ukraine. And it's really great to see that Baykar is like, yeah, no, we're just send it to Ukraine. Just send the money to Ukraine. We'll send the drones. Down here in Syria, the coalition has killed an Al-Qaeda linked has killed the leader of an Al-Qaeda linked group, Qaras al-Din, who the drone fired 2 missiles while he was riding on his motorcycle near the settlement of Kaminas, which is near Idlib. And you can tell that's all that's left of his motorcycle. So, another terrorist leader dead. Down here in Jordan, here a chlorine gas explosion killed at least 13 people, and in another about 250 are sickened near a Red Sea port of Aqaba in Jordan. A chlorine gas tank exploded yesterday. Jordan's prime minister has said that he has instructed the authorities to launch an investigation into the deadly blast.
صادق بقول لك السيارة على الآخر بدي تكفلها مشكلة. السيارة ليش قطعت فاضية؟ وجوز عملية المناولة كانت مش قبل مش ماشية كويس. بس فلت لأنه فلت معلش.
So chlorine gas is especially horrific. Especially horrific. It's used as a weapon. It's been used as a weapon in Syria before by the Russians and the Syrian National Army against the Kurds and the Syrian Democratic Forces and civilians in places like Aleppo and Idlib. It's very horrific. It's a toxin. It's a toxin, and it will kill you very quickly, and very painfully, and it's especially nasty. But yeah, that's not good. Pretty much everyone in that video probably is either not doing very good right now or has unfortunately passed away, just because of the exposure that they had. Over here in Afghanistan, more aid from the Republic of Uzbekistan actually has reached the victims of the earthquake that occurred here over in the Khost region. We can see that here as well. So this is more aid from Uzbekistan. Pretty much everyone has sent aid. The U.S. Aid, who is the U.S. government agency that runs all humanitarian aid project, stated that they had announced that they were going to be sending $55 million worth of aid to Afghanistan. The United Nations is already there on the ground. So is the International Committee of the Red Cross and the Red Crescent movement. They're already on the ground. There's just a ton of aid floating into this region. But it's about, right now, the estimates are about somewhere between 700 and 1,500 people have been killed. Conservatively, they're setting about 770 people in total, with over 1,500 people who were injured in this region after what has been reported as anywhere from a 5.9 to a 6.1, I've heard. Earthquake actually hit this region and pretty much devastated it. She jumped over here into Pakistan. 7 militants of the TTP, which is the Tehreek Taliban of Pakistan. Those are the Pakistani Taliban. They are not the same thing as the Taliban in Afghanistan. They were killed in a counterterrorism operation in North Waziristan by security forces, and which once again is the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan group. The security forces neutralized some of the militants. Others did manage to escape, and they're currently being searched for. They found weapons and the stuff to make IEDs, according to the country's Ministry of Defense. And the unfortunately, though, 2 officers of the Pakistani Armed Forces were killed during the shootout. Robert Schalk is asking for if chlorine gas is used for something. Well, I'm sure it is. I'm sure there's an industrial purpose for it. There usually is an industrial purpose for just about everything. And Jordan's not one of those countries that stockpiles chemical weapons. Those are mostly things like Syria, Iraq under the Ba'athist Party did that. But it's I'm pretty sure it's like nitric acid. There are industrial purposes for it, but it is extremely toxic. But it is highly used in weapons. That's probably what is, even for me, that's what it's mostly associated with. I just recommend doing your research on that. I can't talk intelligently enough to tell you what it's actually used for, in the civilian sector, for a legitimate purpose. But that's but I'm just associated with chemical weapons as a chemical weapon because it is extremely nasty. It's something that we had to be worried about when I was in Syria pretty heavily. They issued us all MOP suits, which is that's the suit that protects you against CBRN, chemical, biological, radioactive, and nuclear environments. But yeah, it's nasty. It's really nasty. Do not recommend looking up that side of it, but I do highly recommend. I can't tell you what it's used for industrially. So this is down here in Udaipur, and this is in Rajasthan, which is in India. And 2 Indian Muslims recorded a video of how they beheaded a Hindu and posted who posted insult to the Prophet Muhammad on his Facebook account. It happened here in the city of Udaipur, and they also recorded an appeal in which they expressed their desire to behead the country's prime minister, whose party representative started the whole thing. So Indian authorities have arrested 2 men, who were the 2 men who beheaded a Hindu in the clothing store. There's a lot of racial and religious tension in India at this point, on both sides, and we've seen that really flare up over the last I'd say about the last month and a half or so, between Indian Hindus and who make up the majority within India, religious-wise. And then you also have a minority group of Muslims in the country who are rather suppressed, I'd almost say to a degree, even at the government level, or at least have a blind eye turned to them on the government level. And this is one of the major reasons why, on top of the Jammu and Kashmir region, why India and Pakistan really don't like each other. And so that's one of the reasons why those 2 countries are this is one of the hot spots in the world for a major global war to kick off, is actually here in Pakistan and India, because of the major religious tensions between these 2 countries. They're very different religiously, and they also have an area, the Jammu and the Kashmir, which they both claim is theirs. While Indian authorities will conduct counterterrorism operations against pro-Pakistani groups in the Kashmir, Pakistani forces who jointly occupy the region will conduct counterterrorism operations against pro-Indian militants in the region. So it's not a good situation. Jump down here to Sri Lanka. The country continues to struggle to supply any kind of gas. The government suspended all petrol sales and limited to essential services until July the 10th. The Prime Minister has stated that the country's economy has completely collapsed, quote unquote. The government is sending its envoys to Qatar and Russia this week to secure fresh supplies and hoping for approval from India of a 500 million credit line for fuel imports. The situation in Sri Lanka is absolutely terrible. You jump down here into Africa. The Islamic State continues its reign of terror here in Cabo Delgado province, where we've seen them conduct a lot of operations against the people here in Cabo Delgado, specifically those of Christian faith. And 3 people were killed and 4 others were injured in an attack by the Islamic State within the province. And terrorists fired at a minibus of civilians in the district of Masimboa da Praia. Sorry, my pronunciation for a lot of this is absolutely terrible. I barely speak English, guys. And then they fled. The Rwandan armed forces deployed several special forces units to the scene of the incident in search for the attackers. We can see that minibus there. obviously it was it caught fire and burned. But Mozambique is pretty much overrun with the Islamic State. There's a large contingent of the Islamic State within the country of Mozambique. And many of these countries, unlike what you saw in the war on terror in Iraq and Afghanistan, they're not getting that kind of support that the Iraqi armed forces were getting, or the Syrian Democratic Forces were getting, or this, that you're seeing truly, the Islamic State, I would say, is almost near peer with their military to an extent. Now, there is renewed focus in this region as the Islamic State has grown to become such a widespread threat to pretty much the entire continent of Africa. But it isn't to that point yet. No one's putting a lot of ground troops on there, and really Africa is really kind of fending for themselves. Or they're, obviously Rwanda, like I said, sent special forces units into there. There's coalitions from African countries that are going into there. You also see that in Somalia, where the Burundi army is in there helping with fighting El Shabaab there, and dealing with that. So. But we're seeing that it's a renewed effort here in Africa. This is considered the forefront of the fight against the Islamic State. Brazil, we see the planet of the apes. So, there's been a monkey in Brazil at one of the towns here. And we thought this was kind of funny, so we had to throw it in. But there's been a monkey who got a hold of a machete here in Brazil, who's been terrorizing locals in one of these towns for an entire week. And we have a video of it. Take a look. They're rising against us, guys. He's just been going around town, just has a machete. No one can take it away from him. He's just running around town with a machete. So jump up here into New York. We can see that the UN is sending $10 million in aid to Afghanistan following the earthquake. This is coming from Martin Griffiths, who is the Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator in the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. He announced on Twitter on the 25th of June, so this is a little bit older, that the UN has released $10 million from their emergency fund. That's going to directly go to Afghanistan while they await other measures. Jump down here into Washington, where more sanctions have hit Russia out of the United States. The G7 restriction and ban on gold imports from amongst the G7 nations has already gone into effect here in the United States. They also sanctioned 45 separate organizations and 29 additional individuals. And they also restricted Russian visas within the United States, at least on the side of the Department of State. And we have that from their official press release, which came out today. And this came out, I believe it was at 10:14 this morning. And the president did sign executive orders in result of this. But this sanction goes, the restriction of those visas go to more than 500 Russian Federation military personnel and Russian Federation officials, including those within the FSB. Jump down here into Texas, where an abandoned truck that was being used by coyotes down in Mexico. 50 people were found dead in the back of the vehicle, with another 16 that were hospitalized after an abandoned tractor trailer was found in the sweltering heat with all of these migrants stuffed into the back. It was abandoned during an attempt to be smuggled across the border. And that is the tractor trailer there. So overall, just not a very good situation. Lake Mead's water levels have dropped to relatively historic lows. Lake Mead's water level on Wednesday was measured at 1,044.3 feet. Its lowest elevation since the lake was filled in the 1930s. If the reservoir does dip below 895 feet, Lake Mead would reach dead pool, carrying enormous consequences for millions of people across Arizona, California, Nevada, and parts of Mexico. Persistent drought conditions over about the past 2 decades have really and those were also exacerbated by the ongoing climate change that increased the demands for water within the southwestern United States. and that has really contributed to the depletion of Lake Mead. According to the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, the water managers across the southwestern United States are making efforts to manage the flow of water into the Colorado River and regulate water use among states in the region, using measures designed to help replenish Lake Mead. This is actually, so this is something we had actually talked about. This is something that was brought up by one of our users on our Discord, that I haven't been covering this. And I've been out there. I used to actually live in this region of the United States. And yeah, Lake Mead is pretty massive, to say the least. It's a huge reservoir. That's actually where the Hoover Dam is. The User Dam is what creates Lake Mead over here by Boulder City. But yep, there it is. But it's but yeah, so it's a pretty big deal when something like this, and it affects a ton of people. As you can see, this is just desert. It's just desert, empty desert. You know, pretty much almost until you get clear up to the coast here by Los Angeles. It's just desert. And so there's an immense drought that's been going on. You hear about it from LA, that you hear about them bringing in bottles of water for this region. California imports a ton of bottled water as a result of this to try and reduce the levels of level of usage from Lake Mead. But there's been a lot of climate issues that have really attributed to this, and it's really caused a lot of issues for them. But also, as we jump over here into San Francisco, self-driving taxis have officially launched in San Francisco. Technology is now here, guys. And we now have self-driving cars driving around San Francisco. For the first time, San Francisco residents were able to order an unmanned taxi without a driver on a paid basis. Thus, the robotic taxi began to fully provide services to customers. Previously, self-driving taxis could only charge if a driver was present in the car for safety reasons. We go over here up into Baltimore, Maryland, here over at Johns Hopkins. We can see that for the first time in about 30 years, a partially paralyzed man has once again been able to feed himself thanks to some robotic arms in his own mind. The man, who has limited upper body mobility, was unable to use his fingers and was able to move his fist in response to prompts. The neural signals underpinning these motions and were translated by electrodes implanted into his brain, allowed to control of robotic limbs. And they can follow instructions such as cut food, scoop food, and most importantly, eat food. And he was able to feed himself. So here's that Frontiers article regarding this, if you guys want to check it out. You can see here the full thing. Pretty cool. As we jump over here into Zurich, scientists have developed artificial muscles. So Swiss scientists have developed artificial upper body muscles, and they serve as an extra layer, of upper body muscles. The device undermines that movement a person wants to make, enhances it, and thus people with disorders like musculoskeletal system to perform household movements. So basically, if you have problems with your muscles, you can now use these artificial muscles to get kind of your life back. Before going on sale, the device will be reduced in size and weight, and now it weighs only 4 kilograms. Pretty cool. Really, really simple. And apparently there was a video that I ended up clicking off of on this one, guys. So let's go ahead and take a look and see if I can get it back up.
Cut and eat food. Move right hand forward to start. Moving fork to food. Select food location, right hand, forward back left right. Poke food, move right hand down. Moving knife to left of fork. Select cut point, move left hand, forward back left right. Cut food, move left hand down, move right hand right or back. Retracting knife. Scoop food, roll right hand right. Moving food to mouth. Align food with mouth, up down left right. Eat food, move food to mouth. Moving fork away from mouth. Done, idle.
So sorry about that we kind of skipped over that video. I thought that was just a pop-up, guys. I'm sorry. But yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, is it a lot? Yeah, it is a lot. It is a lot to do. But technology has to start somewhere. And no matter what you can do, if you can make your life a little bit better, if you can make your life have some kind of normality again, especially with someone who hasn't been able to feed himself for probably decades, right? That is a huge thing. That means that he has some kind of semblance of having he can eat, he can feed himself again, and that is a huge emotional boost to somebody. So that's a huge deal, and we've seen a lot of really cool technological developments on this channel that really can improve people's lives. But as we wrap up the news here for the night, guys, that's not the only thing. We can continue to improve people's lives as well. So please be sure to check out the links in the description below, and please, don't just check out Ukraine. We have a lot of stuff down there for Ukraine. Please give Ukraine a lot of support, but a lot of other places throughout the world really don't get the spotlight because of the ongoing war, even though millions of people are affected by them, or by the crises going on within them. So please be sure to also check out those other locations as well, and to give them your support too, because they need it more than ever. So thank you for supporting us. If you can't give a lot to those organizations, give a little. If you can't give anything at all, give us a like and subscribe. Let your friends know about us, because the more people that are the more people that are here, of course you can enjoy the news the way that we do it, but you can also go and enjoy and also help out these organizations and really truly help us be the news that gives back. So I appreciate the support you've given us. I really appreciate the support that you guys keep giving those organizations, because that's really what this is all about. We're never doing super chats here. We're never doing any of that. We're never pushing merch. We're never doing any of that here, because that is 100%. This project is about helping people and helping everyone all over the globe, regardless of the crisis ongoing. And if you have more donation links, and I cannot stress this enough, if you have more donation links, please jump on our Discord and send them to us. Send them to a staff member, because we are constantly looking for more. We want to vet more. We want to talk, we want to be able to bring more onto this channel, add them to our new website that's down there too, and all of that stuff, and be able to, keep building this with reputable places. We have two criteria that we really look for, the two main criteria, and that is that, one, it's a reputable organization, preferably a 501c3 that we can, a nonprofit organization registered that we can donate to, that has a history, that we can go back through and look at the reports and everything independently. But also we want to make sure that 80% or more of those donations are actually going to organize, going to the people. It's not going to salaries or administration costs. Every single donation link that we have, 80% or more of their donations goes directly to helping people. So please make sure to, please make sure to give us some more. We're always looking for more. We're always trying to constantly, add to that list, and we can't do it alone. We need your guys' help with that as well. So please jump on the Discord, let a staff member know, send us the link for them, let us know who they are, kind of what they do in general, just a short, like, hey, this is what they're trying to do with this, and that way we can get the vetting process started, and hopefully we can get it added to the stream onto the list, especially if it's a location that we may not have yet. So please let us know. And I hope that you guys will be back with us tomorrow for more. I hope that you guys really enjoyed getting this 48 hours of news and review. Once again, if you can come join us on our Discord, that link's also in the description below. You can come and enjoy our conversations that are on there. We do have a partnership with the Ukrainian Conflict Channel too. If you guys want to go check them out, we also that partnership link and their invites also on our Discord too. And we also have a brand new website that we launched today, and that has all sorts of stuff on there. It has all of the donation links. It has every single map. In fact, I will be adding this map to it after we get off of here and after we end this stream. So this map will also be going on there, so you guys can go and check that out as well. And you can go back through all of the history, I believe, up until April the 11th, which is when we started archiving our maps. So you guys can go check it out, clear up until the pretty much immediately about a month into the war here in Ukraine and the events that we've covered since then. And also check out the different organizations and check out how we do things, some of the stuff that we've written regarding, to help you better understand. You can see about the dangers of misinformation. You can read about how the Javelin works and why the Javelin is the way it is. You can also read up about, Russian armor capabilities on there. So go and check that stuff out, guys. I hope that you enjoy that too. I hope that you guys will keep supporting us. I hope that you, your family, and your friends are safe. And if not, I hope that you guys find that safety and security in the near future. There's a lot of bad stuff going on. I really don't want any of my viewers having to go through that. So with that being said, that's everything in the world tonight. That's all of the news for the night. We will be back here again tomorrow with another live stream at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Central. I hope that you guys will be back to join us and help give with to a lot of these organizations that we are supporting here. And hopefully we'll get some new ones from you guys here in the coming hours. So thank you for joining us, guys. My name is Paul from the New News, and you guys have a wonderful rest of your night. Have a wonderful Wednesday. It's the middle of the week, and we will see you guys hopefully once again tomorrow night. So have a good one, guys.